Mars' position is that the US copyright law requires anyone using copyrighted material to pay for it. You incur a copyright when you publicly perform a copyrighted music. So the difference is that if you play your music at home, that's not a public performance, so you're not owned any copyright. You don't owe a copyright fee. At the health club, you're doing a public performance, and that's why you owe a copyright fee. There is an exemption that for if you sort of fall somewhere between home style and big club. And what that is the law that we helped pass back in 20 years ago said that if codified existing law, which is a home style exemption. So if you're using home style setup in your club, you can be subject to it. Now, picture something like this. Picture a workout room with 4 speakers. You might fall into the home style exemption. If you do group X, you probably aren't going to be able to set up anything to be able to use the home style, to use the exemption. So really for a very, very small kind of workout facility that's playing a boombox or 4 speakers or an iPad or your phone over a speaker, that could be an exception. But otherwise, it's pretty difficult for most clubs to find the exception. It really comes down to how the performing rights organizations set their fee. The way the BMI sets the fee is that they have 2 distinct fees. If you do background music only, you pay the background only music fee. If you do group X, you do a group X fee and you do a background only music. Now, ASCAP, on the other hand, if you do background music only, you pay that fee. If you do group X, the group X fee includes a background music fee. So it all depends on sort of the performing rights organization and their structure. The way the copyright works is that you are charged for each violation. So one of the things that if you just have one song that goes through and doesn't have a copyright attached to it, you incur liability. In practice, what that means is that clubs would receive a letter from one of the performing rights organizations saying you have to pay. And if you don't pay, they will threaten to sue you. To date, I am unaware of any clubs being sued. The problem is if you get to the point where you kind of get a cease and desist letter from their lawyers and you have to settle, settlement can be very expensive. I've said performing rights organizations, and I've said BMI and ASCAP, because those are the 2 dominant players in the market. There are also 2 other organizations common in the US. Not as common as BMI and ASCAP, but common. One of them is SOCAN. They represent a very small repertoire. There's also a new player on the scene, Global Music Rights. And they seem to be licensing really, really marquee players, or musicians, I should say. And they have contacted some clubs. There have not been widespread. The problem is they have a very, very small repertoire, but they have some very, very popular songs. So what happens for the club is, because we've talked about earlier that you have composers being licensed with the various organizations, there is a case scenario where you might be playing songs from all 4 organizations. That being said, the majority of the music you play in the club is probably going to be covered by the top 2 organizations in size, which is BMI and ASCAP. The beauty of the way the copyright system is set up is that the organizations will contact you. Well, so I mentioned the home style exemption, and that like 4 speakers. Well, you can playing a radio over 4 speakers is and nothing else would get you into the home style exemption. Then you run into problems. Even just the presence. There's case law of if you have a PA system and you played the radio over the PA system, that you would be subject to copyright. If you want to do that and be exempt, a safer thing is to go to a service like Muzak that has already contracted with the performing rights organizations, so they're paying the copyright fee necessary to pay the background music. So it would be safer to go and use one of those music services and not have to do copyright, assuming you don't have group acts in your club. Depends. So the services that you use privately, or personally I should say, those again are not the public performance. You don't have to do a copyright fee because you're using it for your personal enjoyment. There are business versions of Spotify and Pandora. They have different names in different countries. I forget what they go by here, but you would have to get the business license because it's the business license that gives you the ability to replay it. There was a time where Ursa didn't even want to talk to BMI and ASCAP because they seemed to be, the bad organization going after our members. What we've done since is realize that there is an obligation under the law to pay a copyright fee. So we've worked with BMI and ASCAP to decrease the fee by offering a discount for Ursa members.